Well, good morning on Wednesday. I don't know. To me, it feels like it's Monday or Saturday. I feel like the weekend just started yesterday. I'm lost.
Oh gosh, the Fourth of July. I mean, great weather. Um,
Hot.
hey, if anybody had any hangover over the weekend, yesterday was the day to have it.
Well, I saw a thing this morning that actually said that 2 days this weekend, I don't know if they meant Saturday, Monday, or what days, were actually two of the hottest days ever on record in the U.S. in June.
Well, I tell you what, I'm happy for a little bit of hot weather. It has been so cold
Yeah.
going into the from spring into the beginning of summer. So for me, I'm happy to have some really good weather. It cheers people up. It allows people to get out and have activities, especially rigorous activities. So it's good.
But keeping that in mind, please keep hydrated the entire time you're doing stuff. I mean, you and I were at a couple events this weekend and we saw where that can affect people big time and fast.
Hydration is very, very important. We know the body is majority water, so you got to replenish it. You lose too much, you have a situation where you don't have the right balance. Without the right balance, certain organs doesn't work correctly.
Mhm.
We do have electrical pulses in our body as well, and that can throw that off as well.
Well, especially those people who are, you know what, and they should know these things, but I know we forget sometimes when we're out enjoying ourselves. Those people who are diabetic or have other things, you've got to stay on top of those things because that can escalate quick on you.
That is true. If you have any type of prescription from a doctor, please follow your doctor's orders. They're in practice to give you the best treatment possible for health and vitality. So please follow your practitioner's instructions.
No, absolutely. So we've got some show notes. Unfortunately, we were going to have a guest this weekend or today. Not to see, I'm still thinking weekend. We're gonna have a guest today. We had a little bit of a mix up on their end, which is okay, but we'll have them next week. You know, that's happened a lot with the holidays and the fourth, and people getting back to work today. Because I don't know, you're on the road right now. Traffic looked a little bit heavier today, but not too bad from what I saw.
Yeah, for me, I am going to work on another event set up in North Carolina, and then I got another one in South Georgia for tomorrow. So I'm traveling for the next 2 days.
Well, you won't be too much on the road, but I got a couple of things here. For example, Maryland got a little bit of news on Maryland. So the last of the capital area jurisdictions to legalize it, saying the first to have the retail market, however, and the sales of the cannabis for adult use will begin last week, actually, July 1st. So on Saturday. So less than a year after the success of the legalization ballot initiative, existing medical dispensaries will now offer products to all adults. Maryland's geographically will work in its favor, as we know, as it borders several jurisdictions where the adult use is either still illegal, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, for example, or where the retail markets don't exist, Virginia and DC. So, how much of a factor could that be, and how good news is it that Maryland is going 100% as of a few days ago?
You know they need it for that area. Uh, if you're not a government employee, anybody that's outside of that sector, and it just looks like even still you can't use or consume as a government employee.
Right.
There's been some agendas that's been put out there, but it sounds like a lot of people find themselves on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, and we're seeing that a whole lot, unfortunately. So the next I've got a little bit of news on Florida, and I want to hit this news, and I want to circle on it for a minute. But Florida's Attorney General Ashley Moody is asking the state's highest court to reject the legalization ballot initiative. The initiative gained enough signatures to appear on the ballot in 2024, but Florida's Supreme Court has to sign off on it. To ensure that the measure is understandable to voters and contains only one subject, Moody is arguing in her petition that the initiative does not make clear that cannabis remains federally illegal and overstates the law's effect with regards the price to the setup of the market. And we still have to kind of see where that goes. So get your first feedback on that, and then I want to go to our next step.
Nate, what I definitely would like to see is that the governor of the state to be a little bit more outspoken, just on the program itself. Um, it really is. It really starts from the top. If there's no support from the top, it won't go downhill.
Right. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because you said start from the top, and the top would be DeSantis, correct?
Yes.
Now, DeSantis has come out and said that if he were to run for president, he would not back federal legalization. He is stating, as many of our politicians honestly are, so you've got to dig into that. He is stating that he does not believe that it should be a federal mandate. It should be up to the states to choose for themselves, not a federal decision. So, with that being said, you see where that pushback is going to be because he doesn't want it federally legal. So, at that particular point, that's why I'm bringing it up. Which way is he going to go? Is he going to say, yes, as the governor, I want to move forward here in the state. I want to go with this, with the ballot, with the signatures, and let's make it happen in the state. But he's also coming out and saying that if I run for president, I don't want it federally legal.
I like on one hand how he passed the buck. It goes back from the one leader to the next leader, so it goes down to the governor. Um, I mean, not the governor, but the person that runs the individual states. He is currently a governor now.
Correct.
So basically, what he's doing is he's passing the buck. Now, by doing so, let's look at the catch clauses or the catch ups that can come from that. By not being federally legal, you're still subjected to sanctions, if not possibly arrests or restrictions.
Mm-hmm. And again, with the fact that we're talking about not being federally legal, that means that with it being Scheduled 1 currently, we still are having our hands tied on research, on development, on different grants that could be, yes, they are, like we said, available for HBCUs and stuff like that, but it's not everywhere and not in the terms of beating the dead horse. But without it being federal legal, our hands are still going to be tied on safe banking, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely sounds that way.
Yeah, because then you're not protecting the individuals, you're not protecting the companies, you're not protecting people who are trying to make this a livelihood and legally. You're not helping them, you're not supporting them, you're not safeguarding them. But now we're going to come down south a little. Guess what? Alabama. Alabama's medical licensing woes. The applicants who were denied a license now, because if you didn't hear, they actually paused them. They put it completely 100% on pause, wasn't allowing anybody to do anything. But they now have decided they will allow them to July 13th to appeal that decision. The original deadline was June 26th, but they had paused it. So now they're going to give a little bit extra time for people to go in with the medical licensing to apply for it. Not fantastic news, but hey, at least they're going to grant them a little extension to get medical help.
Yeah, it definitely sounds good. It's the biggest thing is you gotta allow people to take that step moving forward. If you keep pushing them back, it can cause them to lose hope.
Yeah. Yeah, and we see that with anything, whether it be something that the government's stepping on with a medical support care act or whatever it might be. If you present it and then you just keep dragging your feet and holding, they start losing the faith in not just the fact that it may come, but the faith in the system as well.
Yeah, and we don't want to disturb that. We want to keep everyone optimistic. We want everyone to also feel motivated.
So glad you brought up optimistic, because I don't know if you've heard about this right here in Georgia. The Georgia State Board of Pharmacy. How about that one? Pharmacy. They have recently released a set of rules governing the distribution of low THC cannabis oil. So the two dispensaries, as we've known, have already opened This rule would allow registered patients to obtain the oil at many locations throughout the state. And guess what? Look for pharmacies themselves to start selling the medicine in late August or early September of this year.
Mm.
Now,
So,
that to me is kind of interesting that now all of a sudden the pharmacy's going, you know what? Other than this, let's see if we can help patients, right? You've been fighting them and now you're on board with it.
that one is still goes to the opinion. Don't have necessarily to be popular opinion.
Yeah.
But that person who may have used, who just may be on the other side of the line, and that line may be they're aware, they're user, they're educated, they have friends or family that use, and it seems like that's where that notion came from.
That is quite possibly. I mean, I know you're definitely onto something. I'm sure that's got to be a factor. To me, I'm looking at it as the hey of, oh, you know what? We can make money off this. Oh, wait, some of it is allowed for us to sell. Well, why don't we capitalize on it? Which could be an opening door to be very good. Could help a lot of people. But the old saying, money talks, right?
That is true.
So that's how I'm looking at that personally. But hey, a step in the right direction is a step in the right direction for sure.
And we need more steps.
We need a stairway all the way up to heaven, as Zeppelin says, right?
Oh yeah.
So how about this? A little bit of notes for you on New York. If you cast your mind back to say around 2021, which, gosh, that feels about 10 years ago now, doesn't it? The New York
Yep.
first legalized adult use of cannabis, right? You may recall the
Hmm.
exceptions for the market were extremely high. Not only were visions of dollar signs dancing in everyone's head, money talking, but there was talk that the New York legalization would give momentum to federal legalization, just like Colorado talked about, which we hadn't seen. 2 years later, the city things didn't quite work out that way, did it? The legal market's still small. Unlicensed sellers are still omnipresent. And the last time they checked, it's still the Scheduled One drug, right? So the question is, where's the fault? And here's the problem, like you and I were discussing earlier on a different end, the buck's getting passed. Right hand, left hand, nobody seems to say, right? But they're saying now that the
Right.
blame pie is pretty big and fingers are being pointed at Reuben McDonald, president of the Dormitory Authority of the state of New York. He resigned from the state's cannabis board last week. And now they're saying that charges a
Oh.
conflict of interest. And now the lack of support for capital for social equality licenses are surrounding two issues with McDonald, who will still be involved in the industry's rollout. So, gosh, sounds like they've got a big problem that they're going to have a lot of infrastructure to try to fix, doesn't it?
It is. And they were still relatively new, putting it all in place. And the timing on that one is terrible.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We're sitting there, they've been working on it for a couple of weeks, or sorry, a couple of months, honestly. And now the person who's involved with it has literally resigned from the cannabis board. So they got to find somebody new, somebody with the vision, with the insight, with the knowledge, and with the people behind them to help back it to move forward. And I don't want to say quick because you got to do your infrastructure, make sure everything's proper and legit. But at the same point, they really got to start moving that ball forward in big time, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Gosh. So let me ask you, last week when we were in studio, we talked a little bit about the NCAA, remember?
Yeah.
So, drug testing part, as we talked about, not a big update, but there's still some interest that's coming out of this. The drug testing is part of sports, as we know. And one of the drugs on the banned substance list, as we said, was cannabis. Possibly not for long, as we stated. The committee of the safeguards and medical aspect of sports indicated its support for the following for both medical and recreational cannabis consumption and the way they're going to change the penalties and whatnot on that. But we're going to take it now to a second level. It's not just the college level the cannabis use is getting second look at. The NBA, which we've stated, the NBA is no longer testing for that, as we stated, except for in extreme cases. Somebody got injured on the court, you still could be tested randomly like a job could. But as part of the NBA's recent collective bargaining agreement, players can not only use cannabis, now they can invest in the industry. How important could that be now? The NBA players are allowed, without any punishment, without any sanction from the NBA, to invest in the industry and move forward with cannabis.
Shout out to all the pioneers who lost a significant amount of income of choice to seek not only therapeutic remedies, but remedies that come from Mother Earth, and they were not allowed to make a living because they chose to self-medicate and consume.
Absolutely, and then to me, I'm even looking at on a second in there. You've got these guys, which thankfully they're no longer having it held over their head for the testing and whatnot. We know a lot of these individuals use it for their mind, for their wellness. Now this means that they can go out and work with other people and start their own CBD brands, their own THC brands that are legal in the certain states. They can put their name behind it, which, let's admit, when you get a big name behind a product, it helps sell it, right? They
Right.
can now move this forward because the NBA is allowing them to invest and basically start their own businesses aside from it without any penalty or regulation. And I hope NFL will do it soon. MLB, I mean, all of them, rugby, golf, you name it. But how big could this potentially grow moving forward for the entire industry?
Tremendous for the industry. They need it because one, some of the concerns with athletes, especially with their mental well-being, they have to fight the wear and tear on their body with their mind, and they need every relief that they can to cope and deal with those things. And it should be a second consideration given.
Yeah, absolutely. It should because we see, and yes, we've talked, for example, about load management and why it's important. And it is important. It's important not just in sports, it's important in all jobs, all realms. But this is a way that they can sit there after the games, after, let's say they have a game here on the East Coast and now on the West Coast, and they're turning around in a short time to play again. They can now help those aches and pains and do it properly and not have that hanging over their head of, I'm going to get tested, I could get suspended, I could get fined. After a certain amount, I could be out of the league. They've removed that, which can help grow exponentially.
Right.
So I'm pulling up a little thing here for us, just looking at it. Talking about some stuff, and I haven't read this, so we're kind of going on the fly on the moment. Talking about the push for legal weed faces hostile ground in the red states. So what they're stating here is that the advocates are running out of friendly territory that's behind them. The movement, we know, has swept across the country over the last decade, and it has. Nearly half of Americans now live in a state where anyone, at least 21 and over, can buy, purchase, possess it legally. How about this? Legal weed sales are slated to top $35 billion this year and are expected to surpass $70 billion by 2030. Since
Say that
December,
number again. Say that number again.
they are saying that the legal sales are slated to top $35 billion this year in 2023. And then by 2030, with where we're standing now, without any other state coming on board, they're going to expect to surpass $70 billion in sales by 2030.
So three times the sales.
3 times the sales.
You gotta love it when you hear numbers like that, and that anticipation shows that there is growth and possibly
Absolutely.
more growth available.
No, absolutely. Because since December, 5 new recreational markets have launched: New York, Missouri, Maryland, where the sales began on Saturday. These states alone add 37 million people to that legal column. So those 3 states adding 37 million, even if each person goes and buys $1 product, One time only, that's $37 million.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. But where they're showing the problem is, but what's left, plenty of handouts overwhelming in more conservative territories, i.e., the Deep South, and we know that. There are increasing signs of legalization backlash in 4 states: Arkansas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, South Dakota. Now, yes, I know those aren't Deep South states, as we stated, because people are listening to the geography. I mentioned states more in the middle and the north or northwest. Those ones right there have rejected referendums in the last 9 months. So Arkansas, Oklahoma, North and South Dakota each have rejected the use for adults in the last 9 months alone. And every county in Oklahoma voted against it in March. That referendum would have legalized possession and sales for adults, and every single county in Oklahoma said no.
Unbelievable.
I mean, you're sitting here, and a lot of the states, Deep South or not, Oklahoma, well, let's strike Oklahoma because we just said that's not true. North Dakota, South Dakota, you do get a mix. You get 60-40, 70-30. Imagine that, though. One entire state, every county says no to. It makes me wonder, are they not getting all the facts? Are they not being able to see the research? Is it because it's scheduled one? What do you think is causing that? Or do you just think it's an overall mindset of the state and where that state stands at this time?
Mindset. Because if it's not educated enough and it's misinformed, it can create detriment in the decisions that are being made to push the industry forward. You actually lose value when you have an uneducated mind and an uneducated authority.
Well, and that's one reason I wanted to mention this. Now, this is a twofold because, of course, he used to be years ago a former wrestler, Jesse Ventura, who then ended up becoming the governor for Minnesota. Remember that?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Minnesota has forged its own unique legalization path. The state enacted the medical program in 2014. It didn't allow smokable flower products until 2022. Then, last July, so of course a year ago, not right now, the state legalized low potency hemp beverages and edibles. That launched the market, sparked a boomlet of cannabis sales, but also public health concerns due to the lack of licensing and testing. And of course, we know that because it's not off of the Schedule 1. So it's hard to do it. But
Okay.
the thing is, the Democrats want full control of the legislation in November, opening a path to what they're saying will be full legalization. And in this past May, just a couple of months ago, a bill legalizing possession and sales for adults cleared both chambers by just one vote, though, in the Senate, but it cleared both chambers. So it's a long process, but Jesse's work has worked. They are now able to do such. Now, I don't have a timeline of exactly when it's going to start, but it is going to finally start. Actually, let's see. Hold on. I'm getting an update right now. The recreational market isn't expected to launch until 2025, though. Although Governor Tim Walz has suggested the Native American tribes could start the adult use much earlier than that. So there is some positive and some hope there, though, at least, correct?
That is correct.
So that's moving forward. That's a plus. We got to hope that other states will get on board. But, it just goes to show with when we talk about this on these podcasts, talk to people that we speak with, there is still such a stigma, such a mindset against it that it really, and I know we keep going back to it, but it blows my mind that you have a state where every county is saying no to it. It just absolutely blows my mind that we still have that much of a stigma and that much of a mindset holdback on it.
Yeah, and that's in states like Oklahoma. Um, I think that the roots of that state are all interlocked, and that public sentiment is that roots that I'm talking about.
Right. So here's the whole thing. I've never heard of these people. Chicago Atlantic. I'm not sure. It sounds like an investment firm. But let's see this. Chicago Atlantic Real Estate Finance said Friday it approved up to $150 million in capital for New York State's Cannabis Social Equity Investment Fund. The money will be combined with $50 million from the state cannabis tax revenue to secure, lease, design, and construct cannabis dispensaries that have license under the state conditional adult use cannabis dispensary program in New York. And it looks like they're going to be starting that very soon. Let's see. Chicago Atlantic is a mortgage real estate investment trust that organized senior secured loans, mostly to state licensed cannabis operators. And they are going to invest $150 million capital for New York to open these cannabis for the funds of social equity investments and dispensaries. So that could be a nice little plus.
Now, it definitely sounds good to have support from the state. The question is, the applications, what are the costs, the applications,
Right.
the certifications you got to get, if any registration you have to do with the Department of Homeland Security, um, or the DEA. You have to just look at that as well.
No, absolutely. Because I'm looking at something here where on June 22nd, state officials held a news conference in New York. They were touting the success of their new law and noting that the states had seized unlicensed cannabis products from more than 31 stores across the states. The products were worth an estimated $1 million, but they noted that the recent budget has allocated $5 million to hire 37 more staff at the Office of Cannabis Management Health and Enforcement. So by reading that, what they're saying though is even though they're going to try to help build this stuff, they are also creating a force that's going to go in. And yes, it is looking at illegal stuff, but I don't want to say have your cake and eat it too, but they want to grow it, but they're literally also making a task force to try to, yes, safety concern, make sure everything's legal and proper as it should be. But my question with it is, could they be creating this force to kind of create a gray area and cause more harm to some of these people than good? Because they'll say, well, yes, it's a legal product, but maybe it doesn't meet this standard, so we're fining you, we're shutting you down, we're suspending your license. Could that actually end up happening? And how much of a struggle could that be?
That definitely is a major struggle. It could put them out of the game.
No, absolutely. Because I'm looking at something here's one here for you. And it says the city of Albany has been policing some illicit sales in the department, and a few incidents had occurred primarily at existing smoke shops. The city issued cease and desist to stop working orders that initially carried a $300 fine. So they have been hitting some of the stores. The store doesn't comply, the case will go to the court. The judge could request a fine up to $1,000 per day of that time period. The permit to sell hemp products is cheaper though, $300 per year, located for a retail permit, or $25 a month for up to 3 months for a temporary permit, compared to, as you're stating, a non-refundable $2,000 fee to apply. Again, to apply to sell the recreational.
I hate that non-refundable fee. It just seems like it's going to lay somebody's pocket and does not help the industry or any part, any support. Doesn't even go to a starter program, or some form of a grant.
Well, no, that's definitely not what I'm saying. Now, it'd be great, if they would sit there, for example, and go, yes, this is a $2,000 non-refundable fee. However, this fee, if you are not able to receive the license for whatever reason, we will put it into an equity program. We will put it into research. We will put it into fund development, whatever it might be. They could be using this as that $2,000 fee, non-refundable. They deny it, and then they could turn around and put it for what? Helping to fix roads, helping to fix other infrastructures, which, yes, are important. But to me, you're playing the shell game. I'm taking your money here and I'm going to use it over here to help something else that I had no interest in helping you. That's a very plausible cause that could be happening. So I hope that New York will come forth and put a little bit more ties in of what and when and how is done, instead of just simply stating, hey, take your shot. If you don't get it, oh well.
Yeah, looking for so much more from New York. New York is considered the unofficial capital of the country, and we need them to get this right.
Well, and as we stated earlier, they started in 2021. Yes, the pandemic hit a lot of people, affected a lot of different things. But we're still having a lot of struggles here 2 years later. We have the guy who is helping set forth and design it literally step down off of that role, which now with everything else you see going on as well, that's creating even more of a mud hole and possibly, honestly, a sinkhole that could be very devastating.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So I was sitting here trying to find a couple of other things because, like I said, unfortunately, our guest wasn't able to join us today. So we're kind of setting that up. But we're looking at a couple of different articles. I'm scanning to see anything. Of course, as you know, it's the holiday, so it's kind of a light news week on that. So far, unfortunately. But one thing we got to look at, and we'll be discussing it into further detail, and we'll get all this information for you and share it. We're getting ready to head towards that time of elections. And as we've stated, for example, DeSantis is saying, hey, I don't want it on the federal level, it should be at the states. So when people are getting ready to do this time of election, because what we're going to be focused on, of course, will be, the presidential, where do they really lie? And we need to dig into that, because just because they're for one end of the cannabis doesn't mean they're against something else. Like you and I spoke a couple of weeks ago, we pulled it up here for Georgia. Well, actually, gosh, I guess if we pulled it up in Georgia, that would have been, last November now? So forget the few weeks ago mindset. You got to dig in and research, because, for example, we showed who some of our candidates here in Georgia for the Senate and the House, even the governor, they were for one end of it, but they're against the other. So they may have been for the legalization, but they were against the safeguarding and the banking. So you've got to dig in and look at every layer. Just because they are for something and say legalize, maybe they want to legalize, but they're not helping to protect individuals, helping to protect industry, helping to protect the businesses. So we're going to go through and we're going to do a show and we'll break it down. But people have got to do your research on it, because how many times do we get strayed one way because we only look at the broad scope and not the breakdown of the individual?
Yeah, that's true. And then some people's opinion is still uninformed, so it still can create a biasness in the report, um, or just even in the response given.
And one of the things I've always asked people to do is go out, do your research, because there are still so many people in this nation, and I do understand why. You vote for things because what happens? Your family, those people are telling you which way to go, because that's the mindset. That's where they're used to. That's how they were taught. That's how they were raised or whatever. But as the old song says, times are changing. People need to think for themselves. If you agree with the candidate A because you did your research, vote for candidate A. If it's candidate B, vote for candidate B. But don't do it because, hey, this is who you vote for. Hey, I say do this, do the research. And I think as a whole, we don't do that enough nowadays.
Right. No, I totally agree. Totally agree with what you're saying.
I'm actually trying to see if I can pull a little bit on some of these candidates right now. All right, maybe I can't do it. Oh, here's one. Let's talk about this one for a minute, since this is the first one pull up. Of course, this is a name we're all familiar with, Mike Pence. You heard that he's planning on running, correct? So Pence has officially entered the race for the Republican 2024 president nomination, putting his drug policies and actions into focus again. Pence, now, as we stated a few months ago, served as governor of Indiana and has long opposed incremental cannabis reform efforts at the state and the federal levels. During the time in the White House, for example, he spoke out against the attempt to pass the marijuana banking measure as part of a pandemic relief package. He asserts that he believes cannabis is a gateway to illicit drugs and has voiced disapproval of decriminalization simple possession. And while as governor, he pushed the Indiana legislation to ramp up criminalization of illicit substance, saying Indiana was leading the way on the war of drugs. And he signed into a large-scale crime justice bill that included provisions to reduce penalties for simple possession. Pence also opposed the syringe exchange program, which we know isn't the same. But here we go. He's sitting here wanting to run for president, and he's 100% all of this. And it sounds like not only is he against it at the federal level, he's against it at the state levels as well. So that's what perfect example why I'm saying, hey, we've got to be careful. We've got to be cautious, because where are they standing across the whole board? Now, it's easy to see with Pence. He's against the whole entire thing. But some of these other candidates might be here and there. So, like I said, we're going to do a segment on it. We're going to do the show for you. We're going to break it down so that we can help to not just educate us, educate you, put it on our sites, because knowledge is important, and we're getting to that time frame where we're going to hear about it nonstop, aren't we? Everywhere we go, social media, the news, this person, that person, they're running for president. Why you vote for them? Why you shouldn't? It's going to be everywhere. So, hey, get ready, because it's coming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but hey, it is coming. So we're I know we started late. We're sitting here close to 12. Next week, we are going to have our guest in studio. I'm very, very excited about this, actually. I want you to meet him as well. This individual, what he's done is something very unique. I'm not going to try to explain what he's done because, hey, I'm not too familiar with it, but he's come up with a product, and we're going to give you the information so that you can buy and support him. But this product, as many people have seen, he got into it because, hey, it helped save a family member's life. It helped make them better, which you've spoke about how it's helped you and your family. And this individual, I think what his product does is genius. And for people who, for example, need help with things but are iffy or asking different questions, or for your diabetics, he's got the answer. So I'm very excited about bringing him on next week. We'll have him in studio with us. We'll be back in studio. Sam, you got any thoughts, anything you want to kind of speak on as we get ready to close out on this hour?
Hey, everyone. Definitely second half of the year, it's going to be a heat wave.
Yes.
Stay hydrated. Stay safe. Stay informed. Keep tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. Follow me, Big Boy Sam with 2 M's. Follow me, Sammy Mumphrey on LinkedIn.
And everything he said, just take that one more step further. Remember, guys, we're on the second half of the year, and still we see it everywhere. People's health is important. People's mental health is important. So take care of yourself, but take care of each other too, even in the smallest, kindest thing. Opening the door for somebody, saying hi, like we were while we were been out and about. You have an extra bottle of water, hey, give it to somebody who might need it, because that little touch goes a long way. But then when somebody does for you, repay to somebody else. So everybody, let's take care of each other. We'll see you guys next week. Stay hydrated. Stay safe. Look forward to seeing you. Look forward to seeing you in the studio with our special guest. Reach out to me, DJNQ, at both Twitter and Instagram. Guys, have a blessed week, and we will see you all next Wednesday.